Story 1. The Uninvited Guest. It was the waning hours of December 31st, New Year's Eve, a night draped in the promise of fresh beginnings and raucous celebration. I, a 35-year-old man with a penchant for quiet evenings, had been enlisted by my friend Alex, a spirited 27-year-old, to look after his dog, Bailey, while he ventured into the city to revel in the festivities. Alex's home, a modest two-story abode nestled in a sleepy suburban neighborhood, was to be my sanctuary for the weekend. Bailey, a petite husky mix with soulful eyes and a demeanor as gentle as a summer breeze, was my sole companion as I settled in with a backpack containing my laptop, charger, toiletries, and a change of clothes for the following day. Alex had left early that Saturday morning, his instructions as straightforward as they were sparse: feed Bailey twice daily, walk her, and keep her off the furniture. The simplicity of the task suited me fine. Unlike Alex, I had long outgrown the urge to chase the fleeting euphoria of crowded bars and pulsating dance floors. Instead, I envisioned a tranquil evening of movies and solitude, perhaps punctuated by the occasional bark from Bailey. As the day unfolded, I busied myself with work on my laptop, dabbled in Alex's collection of video games, and exchanged texts with my girlfriend, Trisha, who, with Alex's begrudging approval, would join me later that night after her shift ended past midnight. The hours ticked by, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, the house settled into a quiet rhythm. Bailey lay contentedly at my feet in the living room, her soft breaths a comforting counterpoint to the drone of a classic film on the television. It was around 9 p.m. when the doorbell shattered the stillness, its chime slicing through the air like a blade. Puzzled, I rose and approached the front door, peering through the peephole to find a woman standing on the porch. She was perhaps 30, her face partially obscured by a hoodie, a jacket clutched tightly in her hands. "Hello," she said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I'm Alex's girlfriend. I left something in his room and need to grab it." The declaration caught me off guard. Alex had never mentioned a girlfriend, and our friendship, though cordial, wasn't intimate enough for me to be privy to his romantic entanglements. Still, her confidence and the casual way she referenced Alex disarmed me. "I can get it for you if you tell me what it is," I offered, hoping to maintain some semblance of control. "No, it's fine," she replied, brushing past me as I opened the door. "I know exactly where it is." She ascended the stairs with purpose, her footsteps echoing in the quiet house, and slipped into Alex's bedroom, leaving the door ajar. Unease prickled at the back of my neck as I returned to the living room, Bailey's gaze following me with quiet curiosity. I fired off a text to Alex. "Didn't know you had a girlfriend. She's here grabbing something from your room." Minutes stretched into an eternity as I waited for a response, the silence of the house now oppressive. The woman lingered upstairs far longer than seemed necessary, and when she finally descended, her jacket still in hand, she offered a curt "thanks" before heading for the door. Desperate to glean some context, I called out, "Hey, how long have you and Alex been together?" She paused, her back to me, and let out a dry laugh. "Too long," she said, the words dripping with a bitterness that hung in the air like smoke. Then with a fleeting, "Have a good night," she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. Alex's reply came shortly after, his words laced with confusion. "Girlfriend? I don't have a girlfriend. Who the hell was that?" Panic surged through me as I relayed the encounter, describing the woman's appearance and her brief foray into his room. His response was immediate and frantic. "Go check my room. Make sure nothing's missing." I raced upstairs, heart pounding, and scanned the space for anything amiss. To my relief, the items Alex listed, a watch, a stack of cash, a laptop, were all accounted for. But the mystery of the woman's identity gnawed at me, and Alex's subsequent texts, accompanied by photos of various women from his social circle, yielded no matches. As midnight approached, I tried to shake off the unease, focusing instead on the New Year's countdown flickering on the television. Trisha arrived shortly after, her presence a welcome balm to my rattled nerves. Over a glass of wine, I recounted the strange visit, and we laughed nervously, chalking it up to some convoluted drama in Alex's life. But our levity was short-lived. Bailey, who had been dozing by the couch, suddenly lifted her head, her ears pricked toward the front door. Moments later, a sharp knock echoed through the house. Not the doorbell, but a deliberate, insistent rap. Trisha's eyes widened, and I motioned for her to stay silent. I crept to the door, peering through the peephole, but saw nothing but darkness. The knocking persisted, growing more urgent, and Bailey's low growl filled the room. I dialed Alex, but his phone went unanswered, likely lost in the chaos of his city revelry. We waited, frozen, until the knocking ceased, the silence that followed somehow more unsettling than the noise. Determined to reclaim the night, we retreated to the spare bedroom, locking the door and settling onto the futon, with a movie playing softly in the background. Bailey curled up at our feet, her presence a small comfort. Exhaustion eventually pulled us under, but our respite was brief. Less than an hour later, Bailey's piercing howl jolted us awake. She stood at the bedroom door, her tail wagging furiously, her growls interspersed with anxious whimpers. "Bailey, shush," I whispered, but her eyes remained fixed on the door. Then from the hallway came the unmistakable creak of footsteps, deliberate, measured, and far too numerous to belong to a single person. My heart thudded as the doorknob rattled, the lock holding firm against the unseen force. A woman's voice, low and menacing, called out, "Alex?" Trisha clutched my arm, her breath shallow. The voice came again, sharper this time. "Who's in there?" "This is Alex's house." Summoning every ounce of courage, I shouted, "The cops are on their way. You'd better leave." The lie felt flimsy, but it was all I had. I gestured for Trisha to call 911, and as she whispered into the phone, I continued my bluff, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "I dare you to try something. The police will be here any second." There was a hushed exchange on the other side of the door, followed by the sound of retreating footsteps. We remained huddled in the room, Bailey's growls subsiding into uneasy silence until the police arrived. They found the front door ajar, the house otherwise empty. I recounted the night's events, from the mysterious woman to the unseen intruders, while an officer spoke with Alex over the phone. His voice, slurred from drink, offered little clarity, but he confirmed the likelihood that the woman had taken a spare key from his room during her earlier visit. The police concluded their sweep, and Alex, too inebriated to return immediately, pleaded with me to stay until morning. Guilt over my initial lapse in judgment compelled me to agree, though Trisha, shaken, opted to head home. I spent the remainder of the night barricaded in the spare bedroom, a chair wedged against the door and Bailey at my side. Dawn brought no further disturbances, and when Alex returned, his face was a mask of exhaustion and unease. He shared fragments of a story about a volatile ex, a woman whose obsession had spiraled into something far darker than he'd anticipated. Her intentions, he believed, were not theft, but something far more sinister. An act of revenge or intimidation that left us both rattled. A year later, Alex had changed his locks and moved on, but the memory of that night lingers, a chilling reminder that even the most mundane tasks can unravel into nightmares when the wrong stranger crosses your path. Story 2. The Phantom in the Penthouse New Year's Eve had always been a night of revelry for my husband James and me. But this year, we craved the comfort of our own home over the clamor of crowded parties. Our penthouse suite, perched on the 7th floor of an upscale apartment complex, was a haven of modern elegance, its corner position offering sweeping views of the city skyline. The building itself was a fortress of security, with dual locked doors, a sporadic doorman, and a network of cameras monitoring every entrance. Yet as we returned from a friend's celebration in the early hours of January 1st, an unshakable sense of foreboding settled over us. The night was frigid, the air biting at our skin as we entered the deserted foyer. The absence of the doorman was not unusual at such an hour, but the flickering light above cast unsettling shadows across the marble floor. We stepped into the elevator, the hum of its ascent a soothing contrast to the chill outside. My heels, a painful reminder of the evening's festivities, throbbed with each step, and I leaned against James, eager to collapse into bed. The elevator chimed, and we turned left toward our suite, the hallway stretching before us like a silent gauntlet. But halfway down, we froze. A figure, a woman or so she appeared, shambled along the opposite wall, her movements erratic and unnatural. Her dark hair, matted and disheveled, obscured her face, in her black lace dress, torn and tattered, clung to her frame like a shroud. Barefoot, she seemed oblivious to the cold, her body swaying as though caught in a trance. James and I exchanged a glance, our shared unease palpable. We knew every resident on this floor, a tight-knit community bound by the exclusivity of our access. This woman was no neighbor. "Maybe she's drunk," James whispered, his voice laced with doubt. "Lost, looking for her apartment." We watched as she paused at each door, pressing her face to the peepholes with a deliberation that sent a shiver down my spine. Her movements were accompanied by a low, guttural sound, part hum, part growl, that seemed to emanate from somewhere deep within her. The air grew heavy with tension, and I clutched James's arm, torn between concern and an instinctive urge to flee. When she reached the door of our elderly neighbor, Tilly, my protective instincts surged. Tilly, a kind but lonely woman whose family had all but abandoned her, was a cherished part of our lives. Her frequent kitchen mishaps, burnt toast setting off her smoke alarm, had become a running joke, often culminating in shared cups of tea and stories of her youth. The thought of this stranger targeting her door was unbearable. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice trembling. "Are you all right?" The woman froze, her body shuddering as though struck. She sank to the floor, her head bowed, and for a moment I feared she was ill. But then came the laughter, soft at first, then rising into a chilling cackle that echoed through the hallway. James stepped forward, his tone firm. "Hey, do you need help?" Her laughter grew, morphing into a guttural snarl that seemed to claw at the walls. She lurched to her feet, her movements jerky and unnatural, and stumbled toward the staircase at the hall's end. Relief washed over me. Perhaps she was simply too embarrassed to face us. But as we moved toward our suite, she stopped abruptly, her body snapping upright with eerie precision. Without warning, she spun toward our door and began pounding on it, her fists hammering with a ferocity that shook the frame. Her screams, raw and primal, filled the air, each one a dagger to my nerves. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 as James shouted, "Stop it! What are you doing?" Miraculously, she ceased, collapsing to the floor in a heap. But before we could process the reprieve, she began crawling toward us, her movements swift and predatory. Her head lifted, revealing dark, hollow eyes and a mouth stained black, as though she'd been chewing on ink. A guttural growl erupted from her throat, followed by a hiss so venomous it seemed ripped from a horror film. Terror seized us. I kicked off my heels and we bolted for the staircase on the opposite side of the building, unwilling to risk the elevator. We descended 2 flights, our breaths ragged, and paused to listen for pursuit. The silence was deafening, my heartbeat a thunderous drum in my ears. After what felt like an eternity, we crept back to our floor, finding the hallway empty. The woman was gone. We entered our suite, locking the door and collapsing onto the couch, the adrenaline still coursing through us. James texted our landlord, who promised to follow up in the morning. Sleep eluded me, the memory of the woman's growls and cackles looping in my mind like a relentless nightmare. The next day, the landlord reported that the security cameras had malfunctioned due to the extreme cold, leaving no trace of the incident. We moved a year later, unable to shake the sense that something malevolent had breached the sanctity of our home. Each New Year's Eve, the memory resurfaces, a haunting reminder that some encounters defy explanation. Story 3. The Rocking Chair's Requiem. New Year's Eve 2020 was a beacon of hope after a year marred by global turmoil. My friend Logan, ever the host, had invited our close-knit group to his parents' sprawling suburban home for a house party to bid farewell to the cursed year. I arrived early, tasked with setting up decorations and securing a spot in his parents' bedroom to crash, ensuring I could indulge without the worry of driving home. The house buzzed with anticipation as friends trickled in, a mix of familiar faces and Logan's extended circle, their laughter mingling with the thump of music. The party peaked at midnight, the living room erupting in cheers as we toasted to new beginnings. As the hours wore on, the crowd thinned, the revelers dispersing to other venues or their homes. By 3 a.m., only the core group remained, Logan, Cody, and me, sprawled in the living room, our conversation mellowed by liquor and fatigue. Cody dozed on the couch, his snores a soft counterpoint to our murmured banter. It was then that we noticed the sound, a faint, rhythmic creaking that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. At first, we dismissed it as the fridge's hum or the house settling, but the noise persisted, growing more distinct with each passing minute. Irritated and curious, Logan and I resolved to investigate, leaving Cody to his slumber. We traced the sound to the basement door, its wooden frame looming like a portal to the unknown. Logan hesitated, his hand on the knob. "What if someone's down there?" he muttered, half joking. I nudged him forward, my bravado fueled by alcohol. "Just open it." The door swung open, revealing a darkened staircase. The creaking was unmistakable now, steady and deliberate, as though someone or something was rocking in a chair. Logan called down, "Who's there?" The sound stopped abruptly, the silence that followed thick with menace. We exchanged a glance, our earlier bravado crumbling. Armed with kitchen knives, a drunken decision we'd later laugh about, we descended into the basement, the air cool and musty. The space was cluttered, a mishmash of furniture and forgotten relics. A couch, a television, a bar, and, in the corner, a weathered rocking chair that seemed to watch us with silent judgment. We searched every nook, finding no trace of an intruder, but the chair drew my attention. I sat in it, testing its motion, and the creak it produced was identical to the sound we'd heard. The realization hit us like a physical blow. Logan's face paled, and I felt the hairs on my neck stand on end. That chair, he whispered, had belonged to his grandmother, a woman who'd passed years ago, its presence in the basement a sentimental keepsake for his mother. We fled upstairs, slamming the door and locking it, our hearts racing with a fear we couldn't articulate. For days, Logan kept the basement sealed, unwilling to confront whatever had stirred that night. When his parents returned, they found nothing amiss, but the memory of that creaking chair haunted us. It was a fleeting brush with the inexplicable, a reminder that some forces linger beyond the veil, waiting for the right moment to make their presence known.